Bezos Hashem, today's daf is daf Lamed Vav, Masechta Gittin. We will begin Lamed Hey Amid Beis, approximately about 8 lines from the bottom. Continue with the Gemara Ibayalahu. So the Gemara begins. The Gemara just discusses a side topic. We learned before that a rabbi can release a person from a neder. So the Gemara says, Ibayalahu. Gemara asks a question. Ibayalahu. The yeshiva asked, they asked the question in yeshiva. When you go to the rabbi to release yourself from the neder, tzarach lefaret es a neder. Do you have to express what the neder was all about? The rabbi hears the entire neder, and then he gives you the release. Or you don't have to express yourself exactly what the neder was, but you can just say, overall, I made a neder. Please, Rabbi, release me of the neder. So this is a machlekes between Rav Nachman and Rav Papa. The Gemara says, Rav Nachman Amar Ein Tzarach. Rav Nachman says you don't have to go into details of what the neder was all about. Rav Papa Amar Tzarach. Rav Papa says you do have to tell the details of the entire neder to the rabbi. So the Gemara explains what the machlekes is all about. Rav Nachman Amar Rav Nachman says, Ein Tzarach. You don't have to tell the rabbi what the neder was all about, the Amrit Tzarech, because if you do say that you have to tell them what the neder was all about, Zimnin the Gayas Leili Dibure. Sometimes the person asking for the release is not going to say the whole story. He's going to cut off his words. He'll say only partly what the neder was about. The Chacham Ma'ad Shama Mefer, and whatever the Chacham heard, he's going to give the release. Chacham doesn't give a release. Mefer, he gives a heter, but he's going to give the release, and then he's not going to know about the other part, so he only gave a partial heter, and the person requesting the release is going to think that the entire neder is released, and therefore he's going to transgress and over his neder, which is still in effect because it wasn't totally released from the neder. Therefore, Rav Nachman said, don't specify what the neder was. Let the rabbi give a blanket check of a total release, and that will absolve you from any problems that come up. The rabbi is going to say, whatever you made the neder and whatever I don't know about is all released. That's what Rav Nachman says. Rav Papa says, tzarach. A rabbi has to hear what neder he's releasing. Why? Mishum milsa de isura, because sometimes it would be an isser to release a person from a neder. It would be a prohibition. Why? Because, for example, a woman who made a neder saying that all fruit should be usher on my life for the rest of my life if I did not take anything from my husband's ksuba. In other words, she's trying to collect the ksuba, as we learned yesterday, and therefore she makes this neder in order to validate her right to collect her ksuba by saying that I never collected anything. So she made a neder. Well, if the rabbi is going to release her of that neder, then really she didn't prove herself that she didn't receive anything from her ksuba. The neder is invalid. She's not putting anything up. She's just releasing herself from the neder. And sometimes it's an isser for a rabbi to release someone from a neder. So it's important, says Rav Papa, that a rabbi should know what neder he's releasing. Now we learned in the Mishnah. Let's say a kohen married a woman in sin. How does that? Let's say a kohen married a gerusha. So the pasal. So that kohen who married a gerusha, divorcee, cannot do the service in the Beis Hamikdash. He's disqualified. Until he makes a promise that as soon as he's finished with doing the service in the Beis Hamikdash, he's going to get rid of this wife that he's living with in sin. The Tana Allah, we learned in the Brisa, noider v'oiver v'oivid yored umagarish, which means he makes a neder, then he can do this, that he's going to get rid of his wife. This, let's say it's a gerusha. Ba'ovid, then he does the service in the Beis Hamikdash. Yored, he finishes the service in the Beis Hamikdash. Umagarish, and then he divorces his wife. So that's what the Mishnah says. Now, if you say Ein tzarach lefaret es a neder, he does not have to express the neder to get a release. So then there's a way out of this guy. He'll make the neder that I'm going to release myself. I'm going to give my wife a divorce. And if I don't do that, all fruits in the world should be asa to me. Then secretly he goes to a rabbi and he doesn't have to tell him what the neder was all about, and he'll get a release. Leichesh dilma also legabe chacham v'sharle. Maybe he'll go to a chacham, and that chacham will release him of the neder. And therefore, there's no accomplishment by him promising to divorce his wife after he finishes the service of the Beis Hamikdash. Because secretly he can go to the chacham, and without the chacham knowing what the neder was all about, will give him a release. And this is a question against Rav Nachman. So we go to Daf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, and says the Gemara de Madrina Le Barabban. He has to take a public neder. In other words, this person has to make the neder in public. Okay, and therefore, once you make a neder in public, so then the rabbi can't release you. You can go to the rabbi and say that I made a neder, and he'll ask you, was it in public? As soon as you say it was in public, he's not going to release you of the neder. So the Gemara says, that you can't get, according to the opinion that says that a neder, a vow that was taken in public, cannot be released. That makes all perfect sense. But there is an opinion that says that a neder that you took in public can be released. So what good is it that this Kohen is going to take a neder in public? He'll still go to the rabbi and get it released. So answers the Gemara, the madrinele al das rabban. What happens is, when it's not that the Kohen is going to make the neder in public, but when someone administers the neder, it's a neder given to him by the consent of the public. In other words, it's only because the public is forcing him to take this neder with their understanding that the neder will always stay in effect and it will be unreleasable. And that's why that's a way to give somebody an unreleasable neder. And that's what this Kohen is going to have to take in order to do the service in the Beis Hamikdash. Amar Meimar said, Hilka said the halacha is, even if you want to hold that a neder that's taken in publicly, there is a way to release it, al das rabin, but if it's taken with the consent of the public, then there's no way to release such a neder. So the public administers a neder to this Kohen based on their consent, and stating that this is an unreleasable neder, because you would have to get all the entire public in a room, and they have to agree that you have permission to get released. And therefore it has no power to be released. So that's not an issue with the Kohen taking this neder and doing the service in the Beis Hamikdash. So the Gemara adds one caveat. Although an administered public neder can never be released, if the only reason why you're releasing this public neder is because for something that's not a mitzvah, it's just a permissible act. Mitzvah, but if it relates to a mitzvah, even if it was a neder that was made al das rabin with the consent of the public, they put a neder on a person and he answered amen with the consent of the public, which you would normally say is unreleasable. But if there's a big mitzvah to release that neder, yesh la'afara, then that neder could be released. Why? So the Gemara brings a story. There was this Chumash teacher, the Adre Rav Acha Aldas Rabim Dava Pasha B'Yinuke. Rav Acha administered a public neder with the consent of the public, because this Chumash teacher, or this Cheder teacher, the Dava Pasha B'Yinuke, he was negligent with the children. Either he was over strict on the children and hitting them, or he just wasn't capable of teaching. He didn't have the skills to teach. But Ravina brought him back because there was no other Chumash teacher that was as precise as he was. So there was some skill that he had, although it didn't translate so much into the classroom. But they had to release him, because they had to release the neder and allowing him to return to his job, because it was the Devar Mitzvah, because the children were left without a teacher. So we see from here that although a neder that was taken with the consent of the public, if there is a good reason, if there's a mitzvah reason to release the person from the neder, then we will release the person from the neder, even though it was made al das rabin. Okay, we see from there that they also had problems getting good teachers for Cheder kids. Anyway, the Gemara continues. The Mishnah said, Rabbi Gamliel made a rule that we should have an aid sign on a get. In other words, don't give a get that says to his wife, I release you and you're now my wife, without any signatures of witnesses on the bottom. Rabbi Gamliel said that witnesses should sign the bottom of the get, although it's not a money transaction, it's just a release from the marriage. But we need Eidim to sign on the get. And that was Rabbi Gamliel's idea. So the Gemara asks a question, Mibnei Tikkun Olam, to make the betterment of the world, and that's and that's why it was instituted by Rabbi Gamliel. We find it a source in the Torah. Doesn't mean the Torah means, it means in Tanakh we find that they used to sign on documents. The pasuk says, "V'chosoi b'sefer," write it in a document, "V'chosoim," and sign on it. So we see that the concept of having Eidim signing on documents existed already in the Tanakh. It wasn't an institution by Rabbi Gamliel. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabba said, Loi tzricha, I don't need Rabbi Gamliel's loy. It's not so. It's different. Tzricha, I need Rabbi Gamliel's institution because according to Rabbi Loza, Rabbi Loza has this opinion that really you don't have to have any Eidim on a get. Eidi Misira Karsi. What translates and cuts and makes the get effective is Eidim, witnesses that just see a man giving his wife the document. So therefore, technically, according to Rabbi Lazar, you never have to have Eidim sign on the star. It's an effective get just by Eidim watching the husband give the document to his wife. But Takini Rabbanim Eidei Chasima, they established that they should have also Eidim that sign on the document, Mibnei Tikkun Olam, for the betterment of the world. For the betterment of the world. Zimnin demaisis sahadi. Maybe sometimes the Eidei Masira, the ones that witness the actual handing of the husband to the wife, will pass away. Inami is Azal Medina Siyam. They will go to a faraway country, and you won't be able to access who the Eidim were that actually saw this transaction. But once you have Eidim that signed on the star, Eidim that signed on the get, they're like, ongoing witnesses, no matter how old the get is, that prove that this get is a kosher get. That's all it says. That the Eidim that signed on the bottom of the get will be like witnesses that are expressing that this was a kosher get given in front of witnesses from a husband to a wife. That's what Rabbi Gamliel said. You don't have to keep the Eidei Masira. This woman who received the get doesn't have to live around the Eidei Masira. She could go on her way, because once she has a get with Eidim on it, and obviously you can verify those signatures that these are not forged signatures. So maybe she'll get a stamp from Bezdin that it's a kosher, these are verified signatures. So now she has a kosher get, and she can go wherever she wants. With the get, or the Eidei Masira can leave or die. It doesn't matter. This will forever validate the get that she received. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yosef Amar, Rabbi Yosef said, Afilatein Rav Meir. The idea of signing a get can be even go according to the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir always says that you have to have Eidim signing on a get. In fact, the get is invalid without Eidim. So according to Rabbi Meir, the way a get worked was a husband would write up a get, and then get two Eidim to sign on it, and then privately he would give it to her. So Rabbi Meir already had the institution of Eidim signing on a get even prior to Rabbi Gamliel's institution. So what did Rabbi Gamliel institute over here? But Heskinu, the establishment of Rabbi Gamliel is Sheyehei Eidim Beforsim Shmoiseim Begittin, that the Eidim should express exactly who they are in Gittin, Mipnei Tikkun Olam, because of the betterment of the world. Because even Eidim would sign in a get, they would scratch out their signature and not write and print their name so we can know who they are. To the Tanya we learned in a brisa. In the beginning, a person would write, Ani Pliny Chasamti Eid. He just said, my name is Pliny. Maybe he didn't even write his name. He didn't even print his name. I'm signing as an Eid. He would write, I am signing as an Eid, then scratch out his signature. So in order to validate the get, what you would have to do is match signatures. So they would have to find another document that was contested in Bezdin and proven that these are valid signatures, and then match up if these signatures match a star that was validated in Bezdin. So basically, in order because the Eidim wanted to remain anonymous, so because they remained anonymous, we don't know who they are. The only way to validate their signatures on the get is to compare them with another document that was validated. So in Ksav if we can find their signatures in another place, kasha, that would validate this get. Vim lav, if we couldn't, puzzle, that would be puzzle. So you can see how difficult it was to validate any get. You have to find another document that they signed on. Rabbi Gamliel said, we made a nice new rule. They have to disclose exactly their full names, print out their names in a get, and they take an oilam to betterment of the world. Once I know who they are, I don't need to validate the document via another document. I could just go to somebody who knows the person and says, is this his signatures? And he'll say, yes, that's his signatures. And so that's a much easier way to validate a get. So that's what Rabbi Gamliel established, that a person should print out his entire name and sign his name, so that it's easier to find who they are, and so it'll be much easier to validate their get, to validate their signatures if they signed on the get. Says the Gemara, "Uvisimonaloi cannot." It's mashma from the. You have to write your entire name. You have to write your entire name, and you can't just put like initial your name or make a picture that represents your name. So the Gemara says it's not true. Rav, when he would sign his name, he didn't write out his name because all these rabbis were very busy signing on documents or writing letters and stuff like that. So they would say, instead of writing the name, he would make a picture of a fish that represented Rav's name. Rab Chanina Tzayet Charusa. Rab Chanina would make a picture of the branch of a palm tree. Rav Chizda, his name was Samach. He when he signed his name, he just wrote a Samach, and everybody knew it meant Rav Chizda. Rav Shaya, Ayin. Rav Shaya put his signature as a drawing of a picture of an eye. Probably it was faster to draw an eye than to write out the whole name Hoshaya. Rabba bar Rav Huna, when he signed his name, Sawyer Makusa, he made he pictured the sails of a ship. In other words, probably he traveled around a lot, and everybody knew Rabba bar Rav Huna's sign of his name was a picture of a sail. So we see that rabbis didn't have to write their name out and sign their names; they just could make a picture that represented the names. So there's a rule that you have to write your full name out in a get. And says the Gemara, Shana Rabbanim are different. The Beki and Simonai, everybody knew their signs, and everybody knew if they made a picture, they know which rabbi signed on the get. So they got a special dispensation to be able to sign their names that way, again, because they had to sign on a lot of different letters and documents and things like that, and therefore they were always pressed with time. So the Gemara asked me, in the beginning, how did they get their known? How were their names known? Did the rabbi sign on legal documents all the time that everybody knew that their sign represented their name? Answers the Gemara, no, Bediski. It's a way that they used to, the way the rabbis, there was no books then. So the rabbi was just answering letters all day. So they had to sign their names on letters all day, people asking them questions in halacha. So therefore, their signatures, not their signatures, but their symbols became known, and therefore their symbols became known as their name. So when they actually signed on documents or gittin, they just wrote the symbol of their name, and that was enough to let everybody know who signed on this document or get. Now, time also, Rabbi, we used to go to Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky. He would say, instead of saying bracha v'atzlacha, he would say buha. So there's a way that they would sign their names because of the volume of response they are responding to on a daily basis. Okay, the Mishnah said his Hillel, Hiskin, prosbol. Hillel was Masakin, a prosbol. So Tanan Hasan, the Mishnah, the Gemara is now going to explain how did the prosbol come about. Again, normally a shmita would cancel out a loan that the Torah says that if you loan somebody money, come shmita time, the loan is canceled, he doesn't have to pay back. So Hillel created this document called Prusbel. We'll explain what the word Prusbel, but it's a document that basically you are assigning. It's an assignment, basically, of your loans to Besdin. Well, Besdin is not under the lav of not being able to collect on a loan. So you're basically assigning the right to collect on this loan to the Besdin, and therefore the loan will not be canceled come Shemitah time. Tanan Hassam, we learned in the Mishnah. Prusbel Eina Meshamet. When you have a Prusbel in place, Eina Meshamet, the loan is not canceled. This is one of the things that Hillel Hazakin established. He saw that people were hesitant to loan each other. So the capital markets were closed. Why? Because people were concerned that if I'm going to loan somebody money, he's not going to pay me back in time. Come Shemitah time, and the loan is canceled. I'm out all the money I loaned him. The overall Masha Torah, and people were transgressing what the Torah really writes. The Torah requires from a person not to worry about getting paid back. That's really what the Torah is. So when you loan somebody money, really in Din Torah, you have to hope to get paid back. And if you don't get paid back, God will get you the money in other ways. But that's the way it is. But you must loan money because that's chesed. So the Torah says you'll have something that is not right in your heart. That's going to tell you not to lend money to your brothers to your brothers. So the Torah tells you that's a bad thought to have. You just have to loan money. If it gets canceled, it gets canceled. But still, people couldn't live up to that standard of the Torah. Ahmed the Hiskin principle. So Hillel established this idea of a prosbel. V'zehu gufa shel prosbel. This is what a prosbel is all about. You write in the document, you write, I'm assigning all the loan that I have against so and so, that by assigning it to the Besdin, I'm giving them, I get the right to be able to collect this loan no matter what, even after Shemitah has passed. And you have witnesses, or the Dayanim themselves say, we accepted this loan. The judges themselves sign on the bottom of this prosbel. So now, the Gemara asks a basic question. So this is an institutionalized way of solving the problem of giving over technically it works, giving over the right to collect to the Besdin. But what Hillel effectively did was institutionalize it, that everybody should do it. Would be something midaraisa. The Torah wants it to be canceled. And why should Hillel say that it should not be canceled? That to bypass, make a loophole in the whole thought process, so to speak, or the desire of the Torah that the loan should be canceled, and Hillel should make up a whole legal loophole to be able to get it not to be canceled. Why should Hillel do such a thing? So Amar Abaye says, really, Hillel only established it in his time, because in Hillel's times, the whole din of Shemitah was D'Rabbanan, and not only was it D'Rabbanan, but the canceling of loans was only Midrabanan. No, in other words, Midaraisa, loans were not canceled, because Bisman Azeh, Shemitah is only D'Rabbanan. And so therefore, when they first established that Midrabanan, even though Bisman Azeh, there's no holiness in Eretz Yisrael, one should keep Shemitah, one should also, the rabbi said, one should also not cancel out a loan. That was the initial establishment of the rabbis, that the Shemitah should continue on despite the fact that Min Torah there is no Shemitah. Comes along the Hillel and says, but if you do that, people still are not going to loan money anymore. So that's when Hillel was established the prosbel. But really, if Min HaTorah Shemitah was still in existence, and Midaraisa a loan would be cancelable, then Hillel would have not has established the prosbel idea. Amar Abaye said, Beshviyesh Bisman Hazeh. It's talking about Shemitah in our time. And Hillel went with the opinion of Rebbe. And Shemitah now at times is only the Rabbanan. Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Rebbe says, V'zeh dvar Shemitah Shomai. The Torah says that Shemitah cancels out loans. Shomai means it cancels out loans. And it says, B'shtei shmitas akos medara. The Torah juxtaposes two shmitas. Acha shmitas karka, acha shmitas ksapim. One is called the abstention of working on your land during shmita, and one is canceling out loans. During the time where you're supposed to not work on your land, midai raisa, then the loan gets canceled midai raisa. Where we don't have yovel, the whole kedushas haaretz is not there. The holiness of the ground is not there. So therefore, there is no shmita of not working your land midaraisa. It's only midarabanan, Rabbi holds. So therefore, then although loans being canceled have nothing to do with working the ground, but still the canceling of loans does not take in effect. And in fact, the borrower would have to pay back his loan when shmita is not being conducted on the land midaraisa. So we go to Lamed Vav Mebeit. So now the rabbis established they wanted that shmita should not be forgotten, even though there's no kedushas haaretz, and therefore technically you could work on shmita. But Takinu Rabban, the rabbis were masakin the tishamed that shmita should have should cancel out a loan zeichel shvius, because we're going to really keep shvius like the way it was during the times when shvius is midaraisa. So that was one way to do it, and they didn't want. They only technically, if the rabbis wanted to establish shmita again, they should have established yovel again. But they didn't establish yovel again because yovel would require in the 49th and 50th year not work your field. It's something that the tzibur cannot keep. It's a law that the tzibur cannot keep. So yovel is non-existent anymore. Shvius is only the Rabbanim. Now, why is yovel non-existent anymore midaraisa? Because once the Jewish people were sent into exile, so there is no yovel. We need the entire Jewish people living or having representation in Israel in order for us to have yovel. And once, I guess, against some of the shvatim were sent into exile, so during the time of Sancherev, so therefore there was no more yovel. So once yovel was out of the picture, then you don't have shmita because shmita is dependent on yovel. So shmita is not midaraisa; it became midrabanan. Once shmita was midrabanan, the whole shmita shmita technically midaraisa doesn't non-existent. The Rabbanan reestablished it, and the Rabbanan reestablished that not only that you're not supposed to work your land, but you also cancel all the loans. People were preventing themselves from lending. The capital markets were closed. So he established that everybody should write a prusbul so that their loans should not be canceled out. The Gemara asks, so the Gemara asks in the reverse way. Really, the borrower would have to pay back his loans, right? So because otherwise, if he's not paying back his loan, he's stealing. So midaraisa, Torah, loy mishamta shvius. Shmita would not cancel out the loan. Bisman hazeh, because shmita is only midrabanan anyway. Midaraisa, there is no shmita, so shmita would not cancel out the loan, and the borrower would be required to pay back his loan. The tiknu rabbanan and the rabbis should say when they establish that we should do shmita to remember the shmita of old, they can establish that we should say that loans should be canceled. Minat Torah. The borrower should have to pay back. So how could the Rabbanan say, but on top of the page, Tiknu Rabbanan really initially established this shamet, that the borrower should not have to pay back his loan. Amar Abaya said that rabbis have a right to do that. Sheva al tasahu. The rabbis have a right to say that although you borrow the money, and the rabbis want to make an institution of Shemitah again, so they can say, don't return the loan. Don't return the loan. And the rabbis have a right to do that to a person, tell them to not do a mitzvah by sitting and not doing anything. There's a mitzvah to pay back the loan. The rabbis say, sit and don't pay back the loan. And these rabbis have also said that in many other areas where the rabbis will say, don't blow shofar or take a lulav when the yontif falls out on Shabbos, because you might carry the shofar, the lulav in the Rishus Rabbim. So basically, they're saying, don't do the mitzvah by not doing. Sit and don't do the mitzvah. That has the power of the rabbis. So that's Abaya's answer. The prusbul was only established only bisman hazeh, when Shemitah is only drabanan anyway. That's when Shmuel said, then that's when Hillel established the idea of a prusbul. But Rava, so that was Abaya's understanding of when and what circumstance did Hillel establish a prusbul situation. Rava says hefker bezdin hoya hefker. Really, according to, even if you hold shmita bisman is doiraisa, right? So why we back to the original question? Why would the rabbis try to figure out a way to bypass the Torah's desire that loans should be canceled? Answers the Gemara, but so as the rabbis have that power to say that hefker bezdin hefker, that if the rabbis have a power to transfer monies that belong to you to somebody else, that is the power that we give to the rabbis to confiscate money that you have in your possession and give it to somebody else. And the rabbis saw the need to it because midoraisa, the loan was being canceled. In midoraisa, the loan was being canceled, and the whole people were refusing to lend and not living up to the ideals of the Torah to be meichel a loan. People were not lending because they didn't want to lose the money. So it was like a eis lasas Hashem, hefira teresecha, and because it's an eis lasas Hashem, otherwise we're going to lose out the actual loaning, the chesed of loaning people money. So Hillel said that even midaraisa, although it's cancelable, the rabbis have that power to confiscate money from some person and give it to somebody else. How do you know the rabbis have a right to confiscate money? How do you know that rabbis have a right to confiscate money? Ezra established, if you're not going to come to this meeting, anything that you own will be confiscated. So we see in Tanakh that all your possessions will be confiscated. So Ba'anche Knesset Gedolah have this right, and they represented the Bezdin of its time in the Tanakh to confiscate assets belonging to one person. Rabbi Lazar says another pasuk over here. These are the inheritance and how the land was divvied up in times of Yeshua. And the Torah calls it that Yeshua did it. Elazar HaKohen was involved in divvying up Eretz Yisrael to the different Shvatim. V'Roshei Ha'avis, the president of each Shevet. Now notice it doesn't say V'Roshei Ha'matais, the president of each Shevet. It says V'Roshei Ha'avis, the president of the fathers. It's an unusual way to say the name of an unusual noun to say avos when you're trying to refer to the shevet. V'chima in roshim eitzel avos. What does the word roshim have to do with the word fathers? It should say roshei hamatos. The president of each shevet was involved in the discussions to divvy up Eretz Yisrael. This teaches you ma avos mebchilin Spain kol mashir. So just like fathers can decide to give the inheritance to their children any which way they want. They just write up a will, and that's the way it is. Af Rashem, so also the Bezdin, Marchil and Asam, Kol Mashisa, they can decide whose assets belong to whom. So this is another like remez or a hint in the Chumash, in the Tanakh, that the power of Bezdin is to make something hefker. They can say, you don't own it anymore. It belongs to somebody else. So they can tell the borrower, although Minat Torah, the Torah says, you don't have to pay back, we are requiring you to pay back. We're confiscating your assets, give it back to the lender. And they saw that they had to do that because people were not lending each other money because the capital markets were closed because people were refusing to have their loans canceled. And so so Chachamim saw that they should utilize their power that was given to them and confiscate the money from the borrower to return to the lender, although it was canceled by Shmita, through the concept of the prusbul. Now the Gemara continues. Okay, we're going to finish off the daf now. So there's one more question to ask. His little prusbul. Hillel established this document that everybody who loans somebody money before Shemitah ends, you write up a prusbul transferring the ownership of your loans, the assignment of the loans to Bezdin, and therefore you could collect even after Shemitah. So Lidari Hu Desakin, did he establish this prusbul idea for his generation? Maybe he also established it for future generations, like Bisman Hazeh, us. Many years later, the prusbul idea can still work. The my nafkamina, what's the nafkamina? Anybody could write up a prusbul. Anybody could write up a prusbul. So what's the dafkamina? The prusbul is just a straightforward, understandable statement that even if Hillel only established it, came up with this idea, what would stop anybody from using it bisman hazeh? And says the Gemara levatule, we can mevatel it. In other words, we can say that nobody is allowed to use it. Why? Because let's say in this generation, most people have no problem lending money, even though they know their loans will be canceled. They have no problem with it. So perhaps if Hillel only established it for his own generation, that means that that nobody should be. So we can make a new rule and say, since it was only established during Hillel's time, when people refuse to lend each other money, that's when Hillel established it. And nowadays, since people are okay and they don't mind lending money, so then we'll not allow anybody to use the prusbul. There's no exceptions. Hillel only established the prusbul idea for his time because people weren't loaning people money. So bisman hazeh, if we live in a generation when nobody has a problems lending money, or there are other sources of loans, so then we would not allow anybody to write a prusbul. Eli Amrit, but if you say Lidori Alma Nami Tikkun, that Hillel established for future generations later, Hillel said, I'm making this rule for Jews till the end of time, that any Jew that wants to can write a prusbul, and no other bezdin can say no, can stop him. But ein bezdin yochel levatel divrei bezdin chavere elim ken godel hemena b'chachma vinyan, that no other bezdin can nullify the decree of a previous bezdin unless they're greater than that previous bezdin intelligence and also in numbers. But the bottom line is nobody's going to be greater than Hillel. And if Hillel said that a prusbul is okay, even if the idea when he first established a prusbul does not exist in our generation, if there's an individual that wants to use a prusbul, he can be allowed to use a prusbul, and Bezdin or the Chachamim cannot stop him from using a prusbul. So Tashma coming here. Shmuel said, like kasvinim prusbul. We don't write a prusbul. And in Shmuel's time, he said, I'm not writing prusbul, I'm not allowing anybody to write prusbuls. Only in the if you're going to give over the document, the right, the assignment goes to a bezdin of surah or the bezdin of nadar, two great bezdins where Rav lived, where Shmuel lived. So we see from here is that Shmuel said that I'm only allowing bezdin to use a prusbul in my times only if you're giving it to this and this bezdin. So we see that Shmuel was already trying to stop the whole idea of prusbul. Even though people wanted to use it, Shmuel was stopping it because it should not have use. Because Minat Torah, we should go with the Torah, the way it is, that that loan should be canceled. Shmuel limited the effect of prusbul. If you want to say that Hillel made this rule of prusbul for future generations, what would give Shmuel a right to stop the writing of prusbul only for two specific bezdins when Hillel established that prusbul can be written in any generation? Answers the Gemara, Dilma ki tikin Hillel dedare alma. When did Hillel establish prusbul is for future generations? But Shmuel said that he didn't mean that you could go to any local bezdin of nobody to give your assignment of loans. It has to be a very established bezdin. Could go beidina today, my bezdin, ukravami ravasi, or a ravami ravasi's bezdin, dalima lafkuye mamaina, that had the power to confiscate money. That's what Hillel meant. Not that he wants to stop the whole idea of prusbul, but he just wants you not to give it over the assignment to any tiny bezdin of 3 shmendriks, and that should be the prusbul. The prusbul has to be given over to a very, very strong bezdin. Avol kuli alma loy, not to anybody, just a strong bezdin like my bezdin, Rav's Bezdin, Rav Ami's Bezdin, Rav Asi's Bezdin. Toshma, come in here. The Amar Shmuel said, Ha pruzbala, this pruzbal, ulbina da dayana. It's like an insult to the dayanim. If I had the power, avatlini, I would stop the whole process. So here you're seeing Shmuel saying, I hate the whole process of pruzbal. So avatlini. So he wants to stop the whole idea of pruzbal. That no bezdin can override an established takana that was made by a bezdin that was greater than them in intelligence and in numbers. So therefore, how does Shmuel entertain the thought that he wanted to be mevatel the pruzbal idea and go up against Hillel? Once Hillel established, Shmuel's on a lower level than Hillel won't be able to undo it. And therefore, it must be that Hillel only established it for his generations, but later generations, people were using it. So Hillel and Shmuel was saying, since Hillel only established it for his generations, in my generations, I don't see the need for it. And therefore, if I had the power, I'm going to tell everybody not to accept pruzbals from anybody. So we see clearly that the way Hillel established the pruzbal idea was only specifically for his generations, but it continued on to generations after. And says the Gemara Hachi Kama. This is what Shmuel meant to say. He meant to say is really Hillel established the pruzbal for all generations in the future, and I can't undo it. But Shmuel was fantasizing, so to speak, and saying if I was greater than Hillel in my generation, I would stop the whole idea. But really, once Hillel established this idea of pruzbal, the Gemara seems to come to the conclusion that the Hillel established it for all the generations, and no bezdin can say, "Oh, now generations. Well, you can access the capital markets in other ways. Let's stop the whole idea of pruzbal." No, that cannot be done. Hillel established it, and we can't undo it. Rav Nachman always just the Gemara is saying Rav Nachman liked the idea of pruzbal. I love the idea of pruzbal, and let's keep it. So the Gemara asks, I can't keep it? Well, people were using it. What does Rav Nachman mean? I like the idea. Let's keep the idea of pruzbal. This is what Rav Nachman wanted to say. He wanted to go even one step further than Hillel. Hillel only established the pruzbal only if you actually write up a pruzbal. You have to write this document and sign it by the bezdin or the edim. But Ema Bei Milsa, I would say something even further. Even though if you don't write up a pruzbal, or it's an oral loan, whatever it is, you don't write up a pruzbal, let's consider it as if a pruzbal was written, and you'll be allowed to collect it. So I would even gone one step further, that we make like Erev Tavshilin, if in case you forget Erev Tavshilin, the rabbi made it on behalf of everybody. So let us say that in case you didn't write a pruzbal, we should be considered as if it was written by Klal Yisrael at large, and therefore you should be able to collect even if you did not write a pruzbal. Actually, the halacha is not that way. You have to actually write the pruzbal. If you didn't write the pruzbal, then the loan is canceled. Now the Gemara concludes to the end of the daf. Another minute is that the Gemara Rav Shmuel used high pruzbala ulbana. He used a new word called ulbana. The word ulbana dayanahu, right? Ulbana dayana. So what is the meaning of the word ulbana? So we translate it, it means the insolent of Dayan. It's an insult to judges. So that we're giving them the loans. That's what he means. So the Gemara just knows, what did Hillel mean? Al Bailu, hi ulbana, the word ulbana. What does it mean? Lishna de chutzpahu. Is it the word chutzpah or insolent? That's what ulban means. Or lishna de nechusahi. It's to make it convenient. The word, what Hillel meant, what Shmuel said, was the idea of pruzbal was make it convenient on bezdin, because if the loans were being canceled, then bezdin year 6 and 5 would be so busy trying to collect loans on behalf of people who were nervous that their loans would be uncollectible once Shemitah happened. So it would overload bezdin. So that's what Shmuel said. High pruzbala, the pruzbala is ulbana daryan, to make it convenient on judges, so that they wouldn't be overloaded in year 5 and 6 to be in trying to collect loans. So what is the meaning of the word ulbana? Hashma, come in here. Ula said that the Jews who sinned in the Egel, right? They sinned by the Egel after Kabbalah Torah. are like a kala shezinsa bekerev chupasa. It's like a kala that sinned during her chuppah. And this is where Daf Yomi coincidence. After the Torah was given on Vav or Zayin Sivan, then during the whole period of time, the Jews are still considered under the chuppah with Hashem. And then during that time, on the Shivasa B'Tammuz, the Jews sinned with the golden calf. So that is an ulban, that's the ultimate insult of someone, of a woman who's unfaithful right under the chuppah. And that's so the word ulbana means like an insult, is chutzpah, brazenness. Amar Rav Mori Bereda Mashmuel, Mikra, what is the pasuk that describes the Jews sinning with the golden calf and the egel as a kala, as a bride who sins and is unfaithful under the chuppah? Because the pasuk says in Shir Hashirim, Acha Melech b'msibay, while we were with the king in the party, nirdi nosan yurechai, all of a sudden my perfume left me. So that's a symbol that we were still under the chuppah with God, and our perfume left us, our good smell left us, because we sinned with the egel. Amar Rava said, Adayin chavivosahu gabon. God still loves us despite the sin of the egel. The pasuk says, "V'nasan like siv hisriach." The Torah says, the pasuk says, "Nirdu nasan yerecha." The perfume left me, but it uses the word "was given to me." So, but it could have said, "My perfume went sour and started smelling bad." Instead, it just left me. So, therefore, it's despite the fact that our perfume left us, the expression is God still wants to give to us. So don't that even despite our great sin of the egel, God still has a love for us. And then the Gemara concludes with a nice statement. Moser, Tanu Rabbanan, who are the most strongest people of the world? Who are the ones that are most beloved by God? Hane'elavin, those who receive insult, the Einim Olvim, they don't insult back. Shaimin Charpasin, they can hear shame. People say shaming words about them, the Einim Meshivin, and they don't answer back. Oisin Mahava, they serve God out of love. Usmeichin biyasurim, and they're happy when they receive problems from God, suffering with God, because they know that's just to cleanse. That's the way they're being cleansed, and that's the way they're getting closer to God. So those people are such powerful people. Alein hakosav ayman, the pasuk says, "Boy, I have those that are loved by Hashem." Are like the sun in its ultimate power and its rulership over the entire world. So they are such important people by God, even though all these things are done in private. These are mental struggles that you have not to respond to an insult, not to respond when someone says something negative about you, and serving God out of love and accepting and embracing problems with happiness. Those are mental struggles, but those are people who are most beloved by God, and they are more important to the world as the sun is to planet Earth. Okay, we continue tomorrow.